look, this great gimmick, the nightmare, the dreamscape, the landscape of the imagination and mind that Wes came up with. And the fact that this boogeyman is polluting that he knows your most intimate personal thoughts, that he knows what's in your underwear drawer, what you've hidden, he knows what's in your diary, he knows who you have a crush on, and he's exploiting these private thoughts and phobias and fears and then taking advantage of them. And it's this great universal concept. Everybody, there's only X amount of nightmares in existence. You can go to a dream expert and find this out. And every culture has the same ones. The fear of falling, and the flying dream, and various other dreams that we have. And then combined with all the random thoughts we're sorting out from our own personal lives. So Freddy's universal. I mean, I can, there's they ripped off Freddy in India. They rip off Freddy movies in India. There's a god in India that's kind of like Freddy, and those movies are popular there. They're hugely popular in Latin America. They just seem to be, they were instantly universal, and I think that's the real key to the success of the films. And I mean, I wish I could take credit for that, but that's really Wes and what he built into the structure of the whole experience. Gentleman over here.
I was just curious about how much convincing what it was like to do the music video with the Fat Boys.
I know, it's kind of cool, guys. When I wrote my book, I went online to that site where you go to the site for lyrics. You can type in lyrics, sometimes now but for a while, even with Sirius Radio and iTunes, they don't ID the artist a lot. So sometimes you have to use the lyric to find out that, oh God, who sang that song? It's so cool. It might even be an older song, and when I say older, I'm not talking about 50s oldies but goodies, but it might be a song from 2009 or something that sort of slipped through your fingers and you didn't hear back then, but now you've heard it, you want to get it and download it. And I went on that site for my book, and I typed in Freddy Krueger in the lyrics. And in the back of my book, I've got 3 pages. Jay-Z talks about Freddy Krueger. Will Smith talks about Freddy Krueger. It's amazing. Lil Wayne, a huge Eminem, all these artists that reference Freddy Krueger in their songs. But people forget that I did the first rap video with the Fat Boys. And, I hung out with these guys on Howard Stern's show, and I hung out with them at a big, huge party for BET. I think it was like the first or second BET Awards in Hollywood. And the guys were serious party animals, I must say. Their poison of choice was gin, and that's like the worst hangover in the world. But they're great guys, they were funny guys. I went to New Line Cinema and I said, let's do a full-on rap horror comedy like Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Let's do it with the Fat Boys. And everybody told me I was an idiot. And of course, now we have the scary movies, the Wayans brothers doing Scary Movie 50. We have all the Anna Faris movies. We have all the horror spoofs. And the horror comedy is now a true genre. It's a true subgenre of the thing. So I think it's kind of interesting that I get to go all the way back to the Fat Boys. I think you can catch me in a Dawkins video too, all you metalheads out there. Yes, next question.
First and foremost, you scared the living crap out of me when I was a child, watching your movies.
Well, it's a dirty job, and somebody had to do it.
I know, right? And now today, you're my most favorite horror movie icon that there is out there, and you're fantastic.
Thank you.
But going back to day one, the original Nightmare on Elm Street, right after you're done with your auditioning, you're auditioning for Freddy, and Wes Craven says, this is the guy for this role. What stood out from the other people, if there was any, that auditioned for the Freddy Krueger role?
Well, there's a great new book out by the people that did the brilliant 4-hour documentary, Never Sleep Again. They have a coffee table book right now. And I would have brought them, you guys, and I would have sold them at cost, except they're so big and heavy, you know, and you get screwed when you buy them because of the shipping, but they're phenomenal. It's worth every dime. And in this, they talk about the rumor about David Warner. And I don't know whether Wes was approached, or whether it was a New Line Cinema, or whether it was an Ed Benson, the casting person. Apparently, David Warner's name was bandied about. David doesn't remember. Now, I idolized David. Some people say David did one of the greatest Hamlets of the 1960s. And I love the movie he did with a young Vanessa Redgrave called Morgan. That was like a big cult film for me when I was in college. And so every time I run into David at one of these, or when I run into David flying back and forth to London on a plane, I always, you know, he remembers how much I love that movie. But he doesn't remember ever being told that they wanted him. And I think most of David's horror work has come since the original Nightmare, not before it. So I'm not sure if that's true. I know my story is that when I auditioned on Coringa Boulevard, which is that it has all the hipster clubs on it, but it also has some of the old studios on it. And I auditioned. They were going to use this studio where they filmed I Love Lucy and The Partridge Family. And that's where I went for my audition. And you guys have heard the story. I got the dipstick out and greased my hair back, because I was like 170 pounds of tan muscle with long blonde, curly Peter Frampton hair then. And, you know, everybody wanted curly hair in the 70s. And I didn't look right, so I greased I had thin hair, always have had thin hair. So if I fine or whatever they call it, I greased it back. And I've always had a high hairline. So I did that. And then I had like a stubble. And then I took a little bit of cigarette ash, and I mixed it with saliva, and I made circles under my eyes. So that's what I looked like when I went in there. And you know, it's an old theater trick. It doesn't look fake. I mean, everybody looks like you've got those kind of purpley gray circles under your eyes. And I have a thin face. So it could be that I got the role simply because I have a thin face, and when you put makeup on me, I still look natural because I've got broad shoulders. The ratio's right. You know how a lot of times you see makeup on actors, and it doesn't look right. Their head looks too big sometimes in their movies. He could have been that simple. Wes is very kind. He says, I was the only person that really understood the sort of idea. Ed Benson was a big champion of mine, the casting director. But I went immediately after that. I went right down the street to my favorite watering hole, which was called, curiously enough, Moines. And I sat at the bar and talked about it with Christopher Lloyd and George Wendt from Cheers. That's who I was drinking with that day, you know. And I got home, and in those days we had answering machines. Back in medieval times, you push a button, a little red light comes on. Anyway, I had the part. Yeah, I got the part. So, and the rest is history. Anyway, over here.
First up, I loved you in that movie, The Mangler.
Oh, thank you, Stephen King. Yeah. And you know who else stars with me in that? It's the great Ted Levine.
And
Who's Ted Levine? Silence of the Lambs.
And Toby Hooper directed it.
Buffalo Bob.
And,
Close your eyes, kids.
the question is, were you ever asked to direct any of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies?
No, I wrote a treatment, a really good treatment for Part 3. And since then, I've seen everything that I wrote in that treatment in other movies. My concept for Part 3 was that Amanda West, that Amanda had an older sister. And because her death was so violent and horrific that her sister came back from college. So I was raising the age of the Freddy girls. But because she's Amanda's sister, Freddy would want to kill her too, because her parents were obviously part of the gang. The vigilante mob. Excuse me. So it was Amanda's smart glasses, smart, cool, feminist older sister coming back from college to find out what happened to her beautiful sister, her young, sister. And it was all, she researched it with microfiche, and I stole this idea from the Brian De Palma film, Sisters, where the girl does research and it's all in microfiche. And when the mad scientist catches her, he injects her with a sleeping pill, and when she passes out, she has a hallucinating nightmare, and the nightmare is in the style of microfiche from a library. You know, those little, that stuff. So that's the whole opening of the movie was the research into the Elm Street brats and their parents on microfiche, and you followed her, and she became like the detective, Tina's sister. But I've seen a lot of elements, a lot of things that I wrote in that script show up in other movies.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This debonair gentleman over here.
I'm a very big fan of what you do, and I've seen the first Nightmare on Elm Street a few years ago, and then I marathoned them in preparation for seeing you.
Binge Freddy.
Right. And I was surprised to see how humorous your character sort of becomes throughout the series, culminating with part 6, where you're basically a Looney Tunes villain. And I was curious, how much of an impact did you have on the writing of the character, and how important is humor in horror?
Well, humor is really important, because if we can make you laugh, it's easier to scare you again. Because you've released that, it happens at a certain point where audiences start laughing at the horror. And you don't want that. So what you do is you make them laugh at a joke, and then you can scare them easier. You can set them up to scare them. So that's the theory behind that. No, we got out of control. By the time we did part 6, we were doing it intentionally. We had Alice Cooper, Roseanne Barr, and we shot it in 3D. We were having a lot of fun. And there's some great stuff in part 6. Dark stuff with my daughter and the family, and there's some cool stuff in that. But I literally remember using a Warner Brothers cartoon as an image, because there's a scene where I'm pushing like a wagon or something, and I literally was thinking in my mind's eye, what would Bugs Bunny look like doing this? So we went too far. We snapped back. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Freddy's badass again, and also Freddy versus Jason was always a hybrid. It was always a hybrid. It's like I look at Freddy versus Jason as a really fun graphic novel brought to the screen by Ronnie Yu. But no, we had to pursue the comedy. Because the fans demanded it. And the problem was that when we were rushed sometimes, I would do a scene, for instance, Kenny Sagos, the wonderful black actor in part 3 and 4. I had a death with Kenny that was really dark. And they went with a lighter, because I would do it really dark, and I gutted him, and it just fell down my body, and his sides lands on me, and I said something really cold, or I just kicked his body into a trench or something. Then they do the funny one. Then they go for a Freddy joke line. And when you're editing, when you're cutting the movie, the joke becomes like a rim shot on a late night talk show. It's that punctuation point that you have at the end of a scene. You got a joke. It's like the Dirty Harry line, make my day, cut, and you're out of the scene. And they did that a lot with me. And sometimes instead of they should have aired in the direction of the dark, because I gave them some dark choices. But a lot of times the editors, I wouldn't say they were lazy, they just relied. They relied on the joke as the sort of button, the punctuation point for a scene. And so it seems like there's more humor than we intended because of that. I think we have time for one quick question, and then that's a wrap here. And this is perfect. It's one of my Elm Street brats. How sweet, fresh meat. You look like you're surfing. What's your question?
Why did you want to play the role of Freddy?
I think that there was a little boy, a little fanboy inside of me who always wanted to play with makeup and do the challenge of makeup. And I don't mean makeup like lipstick. I mean, when I was a little boy, my godfather had a coffee table book called Life Magazine Goes to the Movies. And in the front of the book, in the silent films, was a section on the man of 1,000 faces, Lon Chaney. And they had photos of all of his makeups. One of them, he played a blind man, and he boiled an egg, and he cracked the shell, and he took the placenta off the egg, and he put it over his eyes. What was that? the first contact lens. So here's Lon Chaney with an egg placentia on his eyes in 1919, playing a blind man with milky eyes. I mean, the guy was a genius, and I remember reading about that when I was 8 years old. So I think that after being in the theater for many years as an actor, where you're responsible for your own makeup, whether it's a beard, or a mustache, or a wig, or bigger eyebrows, or mutton chop sideburns that are real thick if you're doing a period play, for so many years of doing that, and then being in Hollywood, where somebody else was doing your makeup, I thought it might be a really interesting challenge, just to do the makeup. I think that's really the reason that I decided to play Freddy. Thank you for that question, and do not take a nap. I'll get you. Thank you, everybody.